Welcome to the second episode of Mayor's Mixtape. I'm Haley Robinson, Director of Public Affairs for the City of Pueblo.
Heather Graham, City of Pueblo Mayor.
Hence, Mayor's Mixtape. Mm-hmm. I am happy to say that we're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Buzzsprout, all the places that you can get your podcasts. We're also on Government Channel 17, so maybe you are not a podcast person, but you want to stay informed with city events. There are plenty of ways that you can find this podcast, so I would invite the listener to like, subscribe, share, save. Eventually, when we have enough episodes, then they can rate our podcast. But also, I want to invite folks to submit questions to you at mayor@pueblo.us, or maybe suggest some topics that they'd like to see you cover. Mayor, you had another busy week. Do we ever not have?
No, it's always busy.
Busy weeks at the city? Yeah. Okay, so last week when we were on the podcast, you were preparing for House Bill 25-1147, and you were getting ready to testify. You talked about it. You made a post on your Facebook page. Can you give us the follow-up? From what I know, it passed 6-5. Is that correct?
Yes. So it passed out of the House committee. Myself, the Chief of Police, City Attorney Sykes, Chief of Staff McCain, and our new District Attorney Caleb Beauvais went to Denver to testify in person on Wednesday. It was a long day hearing from 60 witnesses signed up to test.
60?
60 in favor or against. So we had panels of 4 participants that would go up either in favor or against, and then the committee had 15 minutes to ask you questions. So we were the first group to testify in opposition to it. We got lots of good questions from the committee members, and I think our testimony was really strong. We were aligned with other municipalities. We had cities, Aurora was there, Arvada was there, Grand Junction was there, other cities whose home rule authority is going to be in threat. This is really the gist of this bill. And they were all there to give testimony on what crime would look like per se in their community if this bill was to pass. So I think that the committee members heard what we had to say. Unfortunately, it did pass 6-5 out of the House, so now it'll be on to the Senate, which I plan on testifying again. And then ultimately it will hit the governor's desk. I've asked Governor Polis to consider veto on this bill because of the price tag that it has to the state, number one, and just really taking away the city's home rule authority and not letting us give the consequences that we think criminals deserve in the city of Pueblo. It's not one size fits all. I know I keep saying that, but I think it's really important for the community to understand that if this bill passes, we are going to have to align with Denver and Boulder and what their consequences look like. And if you've been to those cities, you're not going to like those consequences for criminals. And so I think it's important that we continue to fight for our home rule authority, and we continue to say what's best for our community.
Okay, so you kind of covered the now what. Do we have a timeline for?
We don't have the time or the date. The legislators like to drop it last minute, so we're constantly keep us on our toes. We're constantly monitoring when that committee hearing will be, and we could potentially have to get in the car and drive to Denver because sometimes they just put it out day of. So we're actively watching that. This is a really important bill to the city, to the community, to our municipal court, and so I think that's something we have to stay on top of.
And have you received feedback from the community or from other communities? I know you spoke about the other municipalities that were there.
Yeah, so today we were contacted by one of the other municipalities essentially asking us if we want to join the suit to sue the state for coming after our home rule authority. So that's something that we'll take to the city council. I feel very strongly that that's the way that we should go, and that's how we should position ourselves, and I'm sure the city council will agree.
Okay. So kind of next steps include what happens next. We'll wait on the timeline. I know another thing that's coming up regarding legislation, we have the legislative breakfast with the Greater Pueblo Chamber. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to me? I don't know that many citizens know what that is. Yeah. What does that include?
So it's a Saturday. They do it a couple times during the session. Not a couple, maybe like 4 or 5 times, depending on how often the legislators can come, so your representatives and your senator. will come. They'll be there. They'll answer questions. They usually give me a few minutes to talk about what we've been doing as far as legislation, the county commissioners, and then Senator Hendrickson, Matt Martinez, Representative Winter, and Tisha Morrow. They're usually all in attendance, depending on what their schedules looks like. And it's just a chance for the community to show up, have breakfast, and ask them about bills that they're either bringing forward, if they're part of a committee that's going to be seeing the bill, and kind of what their take is. So, I expect this Saturday to be pretty hot and heated, especially because I know our senator will be there. And so, the big question is going to be like, why are you passing legislation against the City of Pueblo without ever even speaking to the City of Pueblo and how this will affect us, how this will affect our crime rate? We asked to meet with the senator last week, and he denied our request. So it's going to be a good time on Saturday.
Okay, great. We're looking forward to it. Okay, another thing that we talked about last week, but we did have a lot of follow-up. Quite a few folks commented, called your office, and spoke to us about this, was Black Hills. So there were a couple of follow-up questions that we received. How is this feasibility study different from the one that was done 5 years ago?
Sure. So the feasibility study, to what I know, that was 5 years ago, it really just encompassed the City of Pueblo and what that would look like. The study that we're doing now is laying out all the options, so whether that's municipalization just within the city, municipalization and bringing other communities on board who are also being serviced by Black Hills, and then what it would also look like if the city was to join a co-op, create a co-op. So there's different options, different avenues that this feasibility study is going to look at all of the above.
So it sounds like it's a little bit more comprehensive or more in-depth.
It's more in-depth. It's more comprehensive, because regardless, so say the citizens in May vote to not let the city look at taking the off-ramp in August. Mm-hmm. Well, our franchise agreement ends in 5 years. So this would be a great time for the city to start planning on what 5 years down the road looks like. And I think that this information is going to really help with the city and the administration and the city council making the plans from 5 years out. This is a big decision that has to be made, and I think that we have to have all the information to make the decision and make sure it's going to be most feasible for the taxpayers. So
the feasibility study really kind of covers more than just the potential off-ramp, which is the question on the ballot in May. Mm-hmm. But we have a decision to make in 2030. So the feasibility study, regardless.
Right. Yeah. So then the decision in 2030 will be, do we renegotiate a contract with Black Hills, or do we look for another service provider, or do we look at municipalization then? Okay. So this feasibility study is much needed for the time to come as well.
It's not just a one and done for this ballot initiative in May, or even just the off-ramp in August.
Right.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. We have another follow-up question. This one's kind of pointed. We're currently in what this person says is a budget crisis, mm-hmm. and we, being the city, can't manage the budget. So how can we afford to take on running and footing the bill for a utility company?
Yeah, I would say that it's not that the city can't manage the budget, right? So it's the ebbs and flows of inflation and sales tax revenue. Mm-hmm. The reality is the only revenue source to the City of Pueblo is the 3 pennies on every dollar that the consumer spends in the city. Mm-hmm. That's not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money when the tax hasn't been raised for 50 years. Okay. With inflation and just keeping up providing quality services and community of life for the citizens of Pueblo, we have to look at our revenue sources. So, with that being said, the city essentially wouldn't use general fund dollars to purchase a utility. I mean, we're talking $1 billion, 900,000 million. The cost is extreme. The city would...
And remind us what we have in...
We have $21 million in our reserves.
Okay, so that...
No.
That's not even an option.
So, the city would look at different financing options. We could potentially look at bringing another partner on board. We could look at the co-op aspect. And really, when you go to collateralize the assets that Black Hills has built, your return on investment is really... the ratepayers and what they're going to be paying. So you kind of already know how much money you're going to be able to afford, what those rates will be based off of how much the assets are, based off the rate that the co-op or the city or a third party comes in and says it's going to be. So there's a lot of different avenues to look at. Again, it's all being, looked at in the study, but it wouldn't necessarily be the city writing a check out of its, general fund dollar, because we don't even have that kind of money to purchase a utility like Black Hills. I think that 5 years ago, San Isabel Electric tried to purchase Black Hills assets, and I think it was upwards of $1 billion. Mm-hmm. So
there's a big
there's
price tag.
Yeah, so there's financing avenues that allow for anybody to come in and purchase the assets. So
this isn't. So what you're saying is this won't just be a line item.
This will not be a line item in the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's bigger than that.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, so we're gonna transition a little bit. We did get some questions. This one comes from a listener from last week's episode. What was the big box store that you talked about, and why isn't the letter public for the community to read? So this was in reference to the DICE team and what our PD has done.
Yeah, so sure. So, to my understanding about the letter, it was more of an appreciation letter that was just shared to the department, thanking the DICE team for really dropping their shrinkage. This store, like many stores in the city of Pueblo, are facing so much shrinkage, so much theft, that they really have to consider whether Pueblo is the place that they want to keep their business. We've seen a lot of big box stores go out of leave town. Bath and Body Works. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what their reason for leaving was, but that entire shopping center is very empty.
Mm-hmm. Bed Bath and Beyond.
Bed Bath and Beyond.
Not Bath and Beyond.
We still have. So I think that it's not even just specific to one store. This was just one store that, was really showing their appreciation for the DICE team and their blitz efforts and how they're able to apprehend the offenders once they're stealing. A lot of these stores have their own crime prevention officers that heard Sergeant Garcia talk about last night at the city council work session, and they have a direct line to the DICE team. So not only can they call dispatch when they're having problems with merchant theft, but they have a direct line to the DICE team, and they can call and say, so-and-so is in my store. I think that they might be wanting, to steal today. Can somebody come by and watch him and, maybe apprehend him when he's stealing and leaving the store. So,
even just like kind of create a paper trail. Like letting the DICE team know, hey, they were in our store today, and then they can kind of document.
Yeah, from what I understand too, the big box stores and the retailers, so they meet once a month. If it's called Corca. If you want to meet with this business group, I think that they meet at the police station, and they share pictures or information about people who are coming and stealing frequently. Mm-hmm. And they all have like a chat or like some kind of an app that shares pictures, that shares information about offenders and where they've been, if they've been in their store stealing that day. And I think that the DICE team is also part of that. And so it really helps get some of these repeat offenders when it comes to merchant theft. I know last week we spoke about our theft from merchant tickets. In 2023, I think they were 658. Mm-hmm. And in 2024, they dropped significantly to like 450. So I think that has a lot to do with the merchant theft ordinance that I passed on city council and the 3 days mandatory jail sentence. Next Monday, City Council is going to see that on second reading, so we're dropping the threshold from $300 to $100, which I think will increase more tickets. I think that people have found out, hey, don't steal over $300. You're going to go to jail for 3 days.
They know what the threshold is now.
Yeah, so now it's going to be $100. So, hopefully we're able to apprehend more offenders. But again, if this legislation passes 1147 come January of next year, the city won't be able to do that. Our rules and regs and sentences have to pass and be in line with the state, and currently they're not. The city of Pueblo is harsher on crime, and so this will be one ordinance that you won't have that habitual offender, that you won't have a mandatory jail sentence, that you'll just get a ticket and you'll be able to walk away from the store.
Okay, so then it would just be citation after citation, and that would be the end of it?
Yeah. Low-level offenses, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, so
okay.
I encourage citizens, there will be another testimony piece to this where people can testify at the Senate level. So we'll put that out when that information becomes available to us, and how it will affect your big box stores, your small businesses, really the quality of life in the city of Pueblo. And we encourage citizens to testify and tell their story to the committee. And so people hear straight from Pueblo, and it's not just the mayor.
So it's essentially like maybe if no one's ever gone to testify, it's basically like public forum when they come to city council.
Totally. So you get 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It's kind of whatever the committee members, it depends on how many people sign up, right? So
Sure.
In the hearings that we were in before, they got 3 minutes. But when they said that there was 60 witnesses that wanted to testify, they knocked us down to 2 minutes. You could say a lot in 2 minutes.
And someone like you speak quickly,
Yeah.
but also if you're pretty passionate, you can get your point across. And if you know what other folks are going to say, let's tailor it so I maybe say something different that's more personal.
You can do it by Zoom. It's real simple. It's just your name, who you're representing, and then why you oppose or why you're in favor of a bill. So a small business owner, a big box store, a loss prevention officer, this would be a really great time to talk about the effects of crime and merchant theft and what they're having on your store or your business, and how you want Pueblo to be able to proceed with giving strict consequences to these individuals who continue to steal.
Sure. Okay.
There's another bill coming up, too, that was going to be on the schedule today, and they moved it to next week, that we talked about a little bit last night in our legislative update, and that's the HB 25-1206, the extreme indifference offenses not causing death.
Yes. Yeah, so that's a good one. So essentially, Chief of Staff McCain, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is going to drop the felony, a felony 3, if somebody drives by a house, drives by a party, drives by a church, and fires a weapon. Mm-hmm. They don't strike anybody, but then they're picked up for even firing into an establishment.
Sure.
It's going to drop the felony from a class 3 to a class 5, where they could potentially get probation instead of jail time.
So because the person fired their weapon and did not strike anybody, but maybe had intention to, it now becomes a misdemeanor, or
No, it's still a felony, but what
Okay.
it does is it takes the intent out of it. So it bases the penalty on who was injured, how many people was injured, versus now it's the intent of the act, so it drops that.
Okay. So that word intent is purposeful.
And it's scary because I think that we had over 170, I don't have the numbers in front of me, drive-by shootings in 2024.
In Pueblo.
In Pueblo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, we had that ring of young adults who were driving around.
Sometimes not even young adults.
Not even young
Some
adults,
of them
you're
were
right. Yep.
teenagers and not 18.
Yep, driving around the town, opening fire. Luckily, not striking people.
Sure.
But, that's what we're talking about, is individuals like that. Scary.
Okay. And when is that one coming up, Chief of Staff McCain?
So it's in front of the House Judiciary Committee a week from today. So today is Tuesday the 4th. So a week from today, the 11th, that's going to be up there. It's at 1:30. And if you go to, I think it's ledge.colorado.gov, there's links that you could sign up to either testify in person, remotely, or submit written comments. One thing to note on this, that all of the city council signed a letter in opposition along with the mayor. So the city of Pueblo as a whole, as opposed to this. And if you go on the opposition, they list who's for it, against it, or wants to amend it. This one's pretty heavy on the opposing side. I think there was only one group last I checked that supports it.
Okay, so full city support. And I think we can put that up on your Facebook page so that folks understand how to sign up. I know we've done that previously, but we'll continue to do that so that people understand what the process is. We'll make it really easy so everybody understands how can I sign up, how can I support or oppose any legislation that's coming up.
Totally. I think it's, this is the first year that the city has really been heavily involved in legislation as a whole, fighting it, going to hearings and testifying it. And so I think it's really important that we let the community know that we're doing that on behalf of the citizens of Pueblo. We're elected leaders who were put into these positions by vast majorities of people, and they want you to go in, they want you to represent them, and they want you to say what's good for Pueblo and what's not, and that's what we intend to do.
And let's talk about that just a little bit. So I know we've had a lobbyist in the past, but to your point, I would say that City Council and the mayor last year had a pretty concerted effort with legislation. However, you obviously were put into office February 1st, so legislation season had already started, or the session had already started. So kind of talk to me about why this year is different or how it's different. What did you and City Council, or even like members of like our directors or the rest of city staff, kind of do to prepare for the legislative session?
We have way more time now. We're way more engaged.
Okay.
So the lobbyist is actively, distributing our letters, telling committee members what Pueblo's in favor for, what Pueblo's concerned about. But this time around, we have a small team that meets every Friday afternoon where we talk about legislation, whether it's home rule authority, it's crime, it has to deal with voter registration, anything that affects the municipality as a whole. We all meet, we talk about it, we talk about who's going to go testify, the testimony that we're all going to give, and how it's all going to be different, and kind of giving a different scope. So last week when I testified not only as the mayor, but as a small business owner, because I had, some property damage and theft to my business a couple years ago. A city attorney testified what it was like when she was the judge, and then now as a city attorney. And then Chief Miller talked about what it would be like with the crime in the community, and then our new district attorney testified what it would look like for her office. So we really make sure that we're not giving the same message over and over. We're giving a different message and a different perspective. I think that's helped a lot. So we're very engaged. Brian watches the bills all day long to tell us, hey, this is dropped, this is coming, this is going to affect us in this way. If it's something that we need City Council to get on board with, we draft a letter, explain to each council person what they're signing, what it means to oppose or to be in favor of, and we have a good team going right now. And Pueblo's not on the sideline. Pueblo is at the Capitol, and we're fighting hard for the community.
So it's a very intentional, very concerted effort this year.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about what was discussed last night at the work session. The new topic last night was the city's facility plan. It included in-house medical clinic, a potential in-house medical clinic, and ensuring there's enough space for city employees. There also was some criticism about feasibility, and I'm just going to ask, can you kind of walk us through that? What does that look like?
Yeah, so, over the last several years, even before I was in office, the city has been crammed when it comes to employees. I mean, most of our employees in the finance department share a cube. A lot of my employees in the mayor's office share offices. It's not unique to any other department in the city of Pueblo. We still have people who work from home because there isn't adequate office space. Earlier last year, we purchased a building in City Park that was going to be able to house 3 offices, 3 different departments with multiple offices. Since then, some other issues have come forward where our parks employees were working in City Parks in the Annex building. The Bessemer ditch for many years has been flooding the basement. Now there is mold growing. It's unsafe for our employees to be in there, so I've moved them over to the building that we purchased in City Park, the Dittmer building. We purchased that building for $1.3 million, so those employees have been working there. Also, in the meantime, we've had another facility whose roof started leaking. It was inhabitable for employees to be in there. It was the wastewater treatment folks, so they've also moved into the Dittmer building to make sure that they had, adequate office space, healthy office
places,
space, to work in. In the meantime of that transition, the large used to be PBR building that's located on the Riverwalk, the building that the city tried to purchase at the beginning of last year, has come back on the market. We were contacted by the people who had purchased it to see if the city was still interested. We brought this to City Council, and they all agreed that this was a plan to have a municipal one-stop shop, essentially, for all of our departments to be in, so that we can kind of not be all over the city. We have some people working clear out on East 4th.
Yeah, housing and citizen services.
Yep. And And I think it would just really help with how the departments are able to work together with what departments are going to be in this building. So
Okay.
the city started to explore taking out a COP, Certificate of Participation, which is essentially like a government loan. The city has to collateralize other buildings that the city owns. We also have COPs on our 3 new fire stations, a little over $34 million that will be debt service that we have to service over the next few years. So the city essentially is taking a loan to purchase the Riverwalk building. In doing that, we are going to be able to get rid of 3 other spaces where city employees are currently working.
Okay.
So that will help cut down some of the costs. The first floor of the building is also under a letter of intent, and we're going to be selling that. So we're going to have some new neighbors down on the Riverwalk. So this was just a facilities overview presentation of what we gave last night. In the middle of all this, our HR department has been working with our insurance provider. The City of Pueblo became self-insured a few years ago. And along with that, one option that could have significant savings to the City of Pueblo and their self-insurance plan would be to have a clinic for city employees to visit when they're sick.
Sure.
Occupational medicine, it would have a small pharmacy for individuals. And so really the Dittmer building, because it was a doctor's office before, one floor of that I think should be used for this new clinic. It would be low cost to rehab, and this in return and in the next 18 months would save the city a significant amount of money when it comes to our health insurance. And our employees will have health care that is more quickly available. It will help with screenings for police and fire, and employees if there's workman's comp issues and they need to see a doctor day of. This would be
It'd bring it all in house
all in
rather
house.
than us having to go to a clinic or go across town, wait for a provider, that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so it will be a cost savings, for the city. So this, I went and toured one of these clinics in Atlanta to kind of see what it would look like, and I think it would be great for our city employees who are our constituency, and it will be great for the rest of the community because it's really going to free up about 1,900 spots for doctor's visits for the community, because that's how many, along with our city employees and our families that are seen through the healthcare providers, that's essentially how many slots that we have. So I think it's a win-win for all. It's a savings for the city. It's going to free up more providers for the community, and it's going to help with the timely process when we're hiring people. And it's going to be great for our city employees to be able to have access to health care right within one of our own city buildings.
Okay. So I think the way that things work right now, we have like an annual health and wellness clinic. You can go get your flu shot. You can get acupuncture. There's things like that. There's some things that we bring in-house, like one time. But otherwise, it's pretty standard the way it works with any other employer. We just make our appointment with a provider, hope that we can see them. Or potentially, like you mentioned earlier, workers' comp, they send us to very specific locations. But then it would just be this one location to be the Dittmer building.
Correct.
Okay. I also want to clarify, so you mentioned the Riverwalk property. We've talked a lot about Riverwalk properties, so this isn't the Da Vinci Museum.
Nope.
This is the other Riverwalk property that PBR previously held for office space, not the sports performance.
Yeah, the large office building on the Riverwalk. And it would be the top 3 floors that the city would occupy. So we would be moving the law department, finance, which includes sales tax in the finance department, planning, housing, HR, and civil service, and possibly fire admin.
Okay.
And then we would also bring a satellite of public works. So really when people are having rezoning issues, permitting issues, planning issues, it would essentially kind of be very similar to what the county is doing with their one-stop shop.
Sure.
It would really help to streamline development and be a city one-stop shop where people can walk in, and this would be a very interactive building with all the players under one roof. So I think it would be great for the community. I think that this has been a long time plan. My predecessor, had set a significant amount of money aside for a building like this many years ago. The city was supposed to go and partner with the county and be in the Wells Fargo building.
Sure.
That didn't work out because there was asbestos and renovation that was going to be more costly than the city wanted to pay. So this has been a long time coming and a process that, we've been working towards. And now with the health clinic on board with the city, I think that it's going to benefit the community as a whole. I know there was questions about the parking too.
Yeah.
Last night, Councilor Martinez had a question about, are we going to take the parking away from that area where people park to go enjoy the Riverwalk?
Sure.
And walk or go to the restaurants, and no, that will remain public parking, and city employees will still park in the garage or in the lot behind us where they currently park. So pretty much things will remain the same, but you'll be able to walk in one building, and you'll be able to see most of the city offices. Mayor's office will stay at City Hall, and so will the city clerk, city council.
We're just across the street.
Just across the street, yep.
That whole permitting process, they can go through what they need with planning and public works or the various departments. Then they can come here, speak with sales tax. They can talk to the
sales tax will be over there.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Sales tax and finance. It'll just be
so no walking across the street.
It'll just be city council, mayor's office, and then city clerk's office will remain.
Okay.
And then we'll have office space for other entities if they wanted to come and be on board with the city. I think that that's something that we can look forward to. And see what other kind of entities we could bring into City Hall.
Okay, great. So you briefly talked about this, but I just want to dig in just a little bit more. Can you talk to us about certificates of participation or COPs?
Yeah, it's essentially a way to do government financing. So we have the COPs out for the fire stations, and it's a way that the city, instead of using our reserves or a general fund dollars in a large sum to make a purchase, that we pay like a yearly payment. I think that's more affordable to the taxpayers. It's more affordable to the city, especially when we don't know how sales tax is going to fall for the next several months. We don't know what our union negotiations are going to look like. We don't know what capital and the budget's going to look like for the next year. So we believe that this is something the city can afford for the next. I think we have a 15-year loan essentially that we'll be paying on this building, and
it's a guaranteed rate if I understand. It's like a set rate when we go out for the certificates of purchase. It's not like I guess essentially we don't have the issue of not knowing what sales tax is and potential undulation. It gives us that flat fee. I believe we did it with the Municipal Justice Center.
We did. Okay. And those COPs have been paid off. Anytime the city goes to make a big purchase or do a big project, you always look at taking a COP. Okay. It's the most affordable and the best financial way to do so.
So again, we're not going to dip into our reserves. There's not a big hit to the general fund or a big line item.
It'll be a yearly payment that will be debt service.
Okay.
That we'll essentially budget for to pay every year.
Okay. I think that helps folks understand, there's a lot of discussion about financing or making purchases, and we're talking about the budget. It can be pretty complicated to the everyday citizen, and at the same time, those are our taxpayer dollars, right? And so I think it's important to let people fully understand how does this work and what levers do we pull or what process do we have to finance these things.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for walking us through that. Anything else that you want to cover this morning, Mayor?
I don't think so. I think we gave a pretty good overview of what's been going on in the city in the last week, and we have another busy week ahead of us here in the mayor's office.
Of course. Okay, so I want to say thank you for episode 2. That brings us to the end of episode 2 of Mayor's Mixtape. I want to encourage the listener to like, subscribe, find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Buzzsprout, and also they can email you at mayor@pueblo.us. You can email us and ask for a topic, ask for clarification, ask a question, and also share this with your friends, your family, your neighbors, and we can't wait to see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks.